Hey, welcome to the podcast. This is The Surge Effect, and I'm your host, Mike Surge. This podcast will be talking about anything and everything, life in general to current events and past events, and all things about this beautiful and wonderful world that we live in. And this podcast, well, it'll probably have an effect on you.
Before we get started on today's podcast, let's talk about two different sponsors that we have. Our first sponsor is Love My Legs Owen Sound Grey Bruce. Click on the link below in the description and head on over to their website, which is a Facebook site. Has all different kinds of women's leggings on there, and they have 3 different styles of waistbands. And they are the only lifetime guarantee in the business. So head on over to their website, their Facebook page, and check out what they have to offer. Our second sponsor for today is He Shirts, She Shirts. Once again, click on the link below in the description and head on over to their website and see what they have to offer. They are more than just a t-shirt company. All right, let's get started with today's podcast. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of The Surge Effect. In today's episode, we're going to cover a little bit about what's going on in last week or so with the court hearings down in the States with Trump, and, of course, a couple things are happening in hearings here in Canada with Trudeau. So before we get into it, I just wanted to mention a couple things like I always do before I get rolling here. I've already talked about our 2 sponsors. But I also like to throw in a couple of items that I figure you might be interested in. Now, I'm using the Logitech Brio right now. I'm going to pop it up here. There's going to be a link below. Just click on that link. Takes you right to it. Check it out. This camera's awesome. Has an autofocus on it, the whole 9 yards. You can use it for gaming, podcasting, whatever you'd like. Check them out at Amazon. Next one, of course, camera that I use when I'm having another person with me is the C922 Logitech. Beauty little camera, same thing. Click on the link below, takes you right to Amazon, and click on that link, takes you to Amazon, and purchase that. It's amazing. You can read a little bit more about it on their site and read the reviews. I've been using these, and like I said, fantastic cameras. All right, so let's get started with today. So, if you haven't heard about Fannie Willis or Fani Willis in the States, she is the one of the district attorneys that's going after Trump down in Georgia in regards to the Georgia election and all that stuff. Okay, so anyway, so one of the text messages that they got up because Fani Willis and her person that she put in charge to go after Trump, they have an affair, and she hired him to go after Trump. Anyway, this Terrence Bradley is a lawyer, was Wade's divorce lawyer. And this Miss Merchant asked him a question in the text messaging, and she said, like just date, don't hire him? Do you think it started before she hired him? And, of course, Terrence Bradley says, absolutely. So very definitively says, absolutely. So when that came out, of course, just the other day with all the text messaging and stuff like that, and, of course, here's another picture of Nathan Wade. Of course, Nathan Wade is the boyfriend of Fani Willis. So his divorce lawyer is Terrence Bradley. Terrence Bradley says, I don't recall. Says it multiple times. Of course, he's a lawyer, and he tries to sidestep issues and stuff. But he's grilled many times, and, of course, his prosecutor client started when he started dating Fani Willis, and she hired him, of course, to investigate Trump. And Nathan Wade... Of course, he was a little bit sketchy on the stand. Of course, as Terrence Bradley, he's a bit sketchy on the stand as well because he seems to, he's got like amnesia or something, and he just knows absolutely.
I know nothing.
Exactly, he knows nothing. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to show you a little clip here, and this little clip is of, I think, the lawyer for Trump asking questions to Bradley. So listen to Bradley's response when asked this question.
26, which I showed you last time.
was 2 pages of text messages between you and Ms. Merchant, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, the first page starts off by saying, Ms. Merchant, like, just date, don't hire him. Do you think it started before she hired him? You see that?
You hear what he said there? He said, dang, literally on the witness stand, because he knows he's messed up.
Yes, I see it, yes.
And your response to that was absolutely, correct?
I'm going to object, ask and answer in cumulative.
All right, so
After the word absolutely, you, on your own, said it started when she left the DA's office and was judged in South Fulton. They met at the Municipal Court CLE conference. That's what you said, correct?
that is
So they're trying to nail down a time frame when Fonnie Willis and Wade started dating, because there's a major conflict of interest, of course, with this case. That's why they're trying to get it tossed out, because, hey, it's a conflict of interest. Find somebody else. It's another Trump case, of course. It's just another thing that Trump's got to deal with. But just find someone else, because obviously there's these people have been compromised. How compromised? Well, here's another little clip of Bradley answering another question, and I'll play this for you right now.
From Mr. Wade, I would clarify that's where you learned it from, about Mr. Wade and Ms. Willis meeting at the Evans office together.
I can't recall what the conversation was. I do recall knowing that he would go down to the office, or had been down to the office, but I can't tell you in what capacity or when or any of that. No.
Mr. Wade told you that they had sex at that office, though, correct?
I don't recall him stating that, no.
You don't recall it?
No.
So it's possible he did say that. You just don't remember one way or another?
I do not remember him saying.
Learn.
So he's got amnesia or whatever, but so his friend there, Wade, told him about them having sex at the office, and of course he can't recall what's going on there. So like I said, I mean, this is just one of many court cases down in the States that Trump's been involved in. They're basically, if you haven't figured it out yet, they're trying to tie him up, in the court systems, try to tie him up, take his money and just bombard this guy. Like I said, I got no dog in this hunt. I don't like the guy or hate the guy or dislike the guy, but I mean, they're just going at him big time because he's leading in the polls. Like, he's leading in the polls, and they don't want him to be the next president of the United States. And ask yourself why. Why don't they want him to be the president of the United States? I mean, his life was fine before. He was just going along life's happy trail, being a billionaire, doing his thing, and, building the New York skyline and building all kinds of things with his business. And all of a sudden he goes to be president, and it's like, oh, no, no, no. So, in my personal opinion, it's because he's not one of the old boys club. He's not part of them, but throw it in the comments below. Let me know what you think in regards to that theory of mine that he's not part of the old boys club. I'm sure you might have your own, but just let me know what you think. And I'm sure there's quite a few. So this next video clip is about E. Jean Carroll. Because it's another court case of Trump. She was awarded $83 million for something that happened 30 years ago. She claimed that Trump sexually assaulted her or raped her or whatever in the store, clothing store. She can't even remember the name of the clothing store or even kind of what month or even year it was, but she had a ballpark. But anyway, this was them just walking out of that court hearing.
A Manhattan jury has handed down a decision in former U.S. President Donald Trump's defamation case. Trump has been ordered to pay $83.3 million in damages to writer E. Jean Carroll for defaming her after she accused him of sexual assault in 2019.
So basically she accused him, right? And then he said, hey, I didn't, I have no idea who this person is. This never happened. She's a, whatever, called her a whack job or whatever he did allegedly. And for that, he has to pay $83 million. You imagine if that was happened to you or anyone else. If somebody accused you of something and you turn around and deny it, call them a name or whatever the case may be, and you have no defense against it, and next thing you know, just because you're a billionaire or a multimillionaire, and you get to lose a lot of money. It's kind of wild. So that was E.G. Carroll, and now I'm going to show you another clip, and this is of Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba. Now, she is coming out after this case, and this is what she has to say. If you haven't seen this, this is quite eye-opening as well, just to listen to what she has to say.
No. I'm glad you asked me that question. No, I'm not having any second thoughts about representing President Trump. It is the proudest thing I could ever do. What I am having second thoughts about is the license that I stand here with that the people in there are supposed to have. I have not spoken because I respect my ethics while I'm on trial. But let me now speak about what has happened. I have sat on trial after trial for months in this state, the state of New York. Attorney General Letitia James, and now this. Weeks. Why? Because President Trump is leading in the polls, and now we see what you get in New York. So don't get it twisted, whoever asked me that question. I am so proud to stand with President Trump. But I am not proud to stand with what I saw in that courtroom. I'm not finished. Let me just finish and I'll take questions, please. Before I walked into court, that judge decided that every single defense President Trump had, we were not allowed to raise in front of the jury. It is in writing, and I encourage the journalists, the real journalists, to take the minute to look at his orders. There was no proof. And I couldn't prove that she didn't bring in the dress. There was no DNA. There was no expert. My experts were denied. Two of them were denied to come in. They didn't let me bring up that Reid Hoffman funded Miss Kaplan. And you know what we got in there? That my witness, who was her friend, who said that she is a drug addict and the drug addict is herself. That friend, I found out in there, was paid for by Miss Kaplan's firm, and that is disgusting. That is a violation of everything I stand for, and that is why I stand with Trump. And that is why so many Americans are so proud that he is running again and so excited to run to the ballot box. But don't get it twisted. We are seeing a violation of our justice system. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not allowed to be stripped of every defense that you have. You are not allowed to be told that you can't bring it up. And imagine a point where a judge tells the lawyer, before your client, the former president of the United States, the leading candidate and obvious nominee for the Republican Party, before he takes the stand to defend himself, Ms. Habba, tell me the questions you're going to ask in open court and tell me exactly what he's going to respond. And then edited my questions, edited the response he was allowed to give. And guess what my client did? He took the stand. He abided by the rules of this corrupt system that I have seen. We will immediately appeal. We will set aside that ridiculous jury. And I just want to remind you all of one thing. I will continue with President Trump to fight for everybody's First Amendment right to speak. Everybody's a right to defend themselves when they are wrongfully accused, and to be able to say, I didn't do it. And to double and triple and quadruple down and say, this is wrong. This is wrong. But we are in the state of New York. We are in a New York jury, and that is why we are seeing these witch hunts, these hoaxes, as he calls them. And this is another one of them. Be brought in New York, in states where they know they will get juries like this. It will not deter us. We're fighting, and I We didn't win today, but we will. That was made in there, and the behavior I saw in there, some of which was reported widely today, gave us the most perfect record on appeal, and even if I needed it, which I don't, we were stripped of every defense, every single defense before we walked in there. And I am proud to stand with President Trump because he showed up, he stood up, he took the stand, and he faced this judge. And you know what? I'll continue to do so with him. Yes.
Ms. Hubbard, is the former
Of course, I've spoken with the president.
Ms. Hubbard, is the former president scared now of the consequences of his actions?
The former president does not live his life in fear, as you've seen every single day. The former president and probably future president will continue to fight for Americans. Thank you.
So they're hitting him at all angles, like I said. That was the second, the second court case. And, of course, then there was the other one that just transpired just the other day. And that was the $354 million payout that he has to pay to whoever. I have no idea. Trump does. But that was a victimless crime. It was about his going to the bank and saying, I need, $300 million. So he puts a price tag on a piece of real estate. The bank have their own people that they go and check that piece of real estate out, and they go, no, it's not worth $300 million. It's worth $200 million, and we're only going to give you $200 million, not $300 million, blah, blah, blah. Real estate people do this all the time. Anyway, he's done it. He's done it in the past. His father did it. Everyone does it. And for some reason, down in New York, they throw the book at him, and he has to pay this fraudulent fee. The same case that you've probably heard that they said that his Mar-a-Lago estate is like $18 million, that the judge said it's $18 million. Anyone that knows anything about real estate, especially in that area, there's houses around his Mar-a-Lago that are like a fraction of the size of his place that were selling for $54 million, $60 million. So the guy is out to lunch. Anyway, he has to pay that money, but there's a victimless crime, so there's no victim. The banks even testified. They said that, hey, he was a great client and we'd like to do business with him again, but that didn't seem to matter with this judge. He didn't matter at all. So people have to realize that this is precedent-setting law. So when this is passed down, this could happen to anyone. This could happen to any multi-billionaire. It could happen to Grant Cardone. It could happen to Pat Bet-David. It could happen to this guy right here that I'm just going to show you a clip on, which is Kevin O'Leary from Canada. And this is what he has to say about it.
Building. And he says it's worth $400 million, and he wants to borrow $200 million from a bank, which happens every day, everywhere on Earth, including every American city. Every developer is an entrepreneur. They shine the light on their building, and they say it's worth $400. The bank does its own due diligence, as was done in this case, because they're very good at it. The banks are very good, and they say, no, it's worth $300. We're only going to loan you $150 million. That haggling has gone on for decades. That's how American entrepreneurship. And New York is slowly becoming the #1 loser state in America. I'm sorry, that's what's happening. Builds a build.
Exactly. That's what's going to happen because no one wants to do business with that. Basically, they're going to get thrown underneath the bus just like Trump just did. Now, you can replace that name with any, just make it X, right? Forget Trump. Just say X. So, Mr. X went to New York and tried to do this, and then they charged him with being fraudulent with his real estate. Keep in mind that Trump has basically single-handedly changed the skyline of New York with the buildings that he's done. The stuff that the people that he employs, thousands upon thousands of people that he employs, plus the hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes that he pays because he employs people. What did James do? The Attorney General that took him to court. What has she done? Has she done anything to contribute to New York at all? Well, Trump has. Let's just say it's Player X. Player X has done all this other things, paid hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes, and went to borrow money, and there was a victimless crime, and Mr. X has to pay $354 million because they find him guilty of some type of fraud. And the banks got their money, hundreds of millions in interest, and they were good with it. It's weird, isn't it, when you think of the bigger picture? It's just strange the way that they're really, really going after this guy. So that's another court case that I want to talk briefly about. So that's down in the States. So what we got going on up here in Canada with we have so many things going on in Canada with our guy with Trudeau. It's in the court system as well, but these are committee hearings right now as well. And this is Larry Brock, fantastic Canadian, and he is for Canadians, this guy. And here's him asking some questions to a couple of RCMP leaders, heads of the RCMP. Here we go.
Part of the SNC-Lavalin scandal, there were a number of players within the PMO, the PCO, and the Ministry of Finance. However, the principal person of interest in the SNC scandal was at all material times the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. How many times in the last 5 years did you interview Justin Trudeau?
He was not interviewed, sir, or Mr. President.
Okay, and why not?
I'll ask Mr. Payne, who was leading the investigation, to add a little bit.
In relation to this, what the RCMP conducted as far as for the objective for the review of the matter, what we've done is we've proceeded with a phased approach, which initially we looked at the potential witnesses that could provide some information as far as to precision for the elements of the offense. So we proceeded in this phased approach. As we proceeded, we determined if there was any further investigative steps that
Sergeant,
were warranted given the
Sergeant,
circumstances of the case.
My time is very limited. Why did you not interview the primary person of interest? At the heart of this investigation was Justin Trudeau's political interference for his own personal gain and the gain of SNC-Lavalin. I can inform both of you gentlemen that in my over 30 years of experience as a defense counsel and as a Crown attorney, I have never heard of any investigation where there wasn't any attempt, whether they agreed to interview or not, any attempt to interview the person of interest. Was there at least an attempt to interview Justin Trudeau, yes or no?
No.
Did the RCMP obtain all relevant documents to further the investigation, including access to cabinet confidential information, simply seeking a yes or no response?
We were limited with the information that we had access to.
Was that a yes or a no, sir?
I don't know. We didn't know. We don't know. We still don't know this day all the information that's out there because some was protected.
I'll take that as a no. Despite collecting reams of evidence, including evidence from the Ethics Commissioner and testimony from Jody Wilson-Raybould at committee, why didn't the RCMP exercise its absolute statutory right under the Criminal Code of Canada to obtain a production order and or search warrant from a justice to obtain those cabinet documents?
We weren't able to acquire or obtain enough information or evidence that would warrant us to obtain a production order.
RCMP spokesperson Christy Veenstra is on record stating that to obtain a search warrant or production order, there must be reasonable grounds to believe that a criminal offense has been committed. The evidence at hand is sufficient to convince a trier of fact. The evidence at hand is insufficient to convince a trier of fact of the alleged offense. Clearly, she is conflating the legal threshold of policing with the Crown Prosecution Service. Both of you, sirs, will agree that your sole responsibility is to determine whether there are reasonable and probable grounds to lay a charge. It is not your mandate to prove the charge beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the independent prosecution service. Would you agree with that?
I agree, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Was obstruction of justice involving Justin Trudeau the only offense you were contemplating in this regard?
No, there's also intimidation of a justice participant.
Thank you. You would agree that the charge of obstruction is a straight...
So obstruction of justice as well as the first one.
...indictable offense, meaning there is no limitation period, punishable by 10 years in prison, a very serious offense. You'd agree, sirs, that there is nothing precluding your service from reopening the investigation against Justin Trudeau should new evidence become available, including a release of cabinet confidential information.
I would say, Mr. Chair, with any investigation, when there's new information that arises, yes, we have a look at the investigation itself.
To quell public concern, Justin Trudeau, despite his office, is subject to the full impact and consequences of the Criminal Code of Canada. He is not above the law, correct?
I do believe I said that last time I was in front of the committee. No one's above the law.
In my experience, sirs, homicides have been investigated and prosecuted in lesser time than your service has invested in investigating Justin Trudeau. Is there an overall general reluctance in charging a sitting Prime Minister, yes or no?
I would say to that, Mr. Chair, is that we follow the evidence, and if the evidence warrants charges, we charge.
So there's no general reluctance in charging a sitting Prime Minister. Is that correct?
If the appropriate evidence is available.
Thank you.
Interesting what he just had to say there. Brock. Larry Brock. Great MP. Another great MP, in my humble opinion, is a fellow by the name of Michael Barrett.
Remember just
Michael Barrett, he's going to be talking about a couple other things here. So let's listen to Michael Barrett, great MP.
Justin Trudeau's illegal vacation to Billionaire Island in 2016. Well, the RCMP opened an investigative file into it, and I got my hands on some of the documents from their investigative file, and I asked the head of the Mounties about it this week. Take a look at this video and let me know what you think.
I have questions for you that come from an access to information request. It deals with a decision tree from section 121(1)(c) of the Criminal Code, fraud on government. It's by the RCMP, and they've populated information on the document. It asks a series of questions with respect to Justin Trudeau's visit to the Aga Khan Island, Bells Cay. Was Mr. Trudeau a government official at the time? And it says yes. Did Mr. Trudeau accept a benefit from the Aga Khan? It says yes. Did the Aga Khan have dealings with the government? It says yes. Then it says, did Mr. Trudeau have consent in writing of the head of a branch of government for whom he worked? It says unknown. At that point it says, if yes, then the final verdict would be not guilty. But it goes on, if no, did Mr. Trudeau know that he accepted was a benefit from a person who had dealings with the government? Yes. And then if yes, it says, final verdict, guilty of fraud on the government. Now we know that in fact Mr. Trudeau did not have a writing from the head of branch of the government for whom he worked, because that question was put to him in the House of Commons.
Did the Prime Minister give himself permission to take that free holiday in 2016?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker. Commissioner, did the RCMP call Mr. Trudeau and ask him the question?
Did we contact the Prime Minister in relation to this one? No.
The RCMP didn't pick up the phone, but Conservatives asked him the question. We got the answer.
The RCMP looked into this matter, and no political interference was around it. They came to their own conclusion. There was nothing to pursue.
And that answer is publicly available, and it was not protected like transcripts from a committee. So it could be used and has evidentiary value. Knowing that, and knowing based on that decision tree, wouldn't that affect the decision of the RCMP to lay a charge of fraud on government against the Prime Minister if all of the criteria set out in the decision tree from Watt's Manual of Criminal Jury Instruction were satisfied?
Interesting, once again. Yeah, Michael, he does a fantastic job. Another MP is Michael Cooper. He does a fantastic job as well, and this is questions that he has to ask. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. A part of the RCMP's examination to determine whether the Prime Minister violated Section 139, Sub 2 of the Criminal Code by committing obstruction of justice, correct? That was part of the RCMP's examination.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And paragraph 19 of the RCMP investigation report states that the strongest theory towards an offense of obstruction of justice was that the Prime Minister shuffled Jody Wilson-Raybould out of the position of Attorney General so that a new Attorney General would make a different decision regarding the prosecution of SNC Lavalin, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And it's fair to say that the RCMP did not have access to all material evidence surrounding Ms. Wilson-Raybould being shuffled out as Attorney General, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And so, just to clarify then, or emphasize, the RCMP did not have access to all material evidence on the strongest theory surrounding the Prime Minister's potential criminality involving obstruction of justice, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And the reason the RCMP did not have access to that material evidence on what was central to determining whether the Prime Minister broke the law was because of the parameters of the scope of the Order of Council with respect to the waiver of cabinet confidentiality, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. The parameters did not allow us to fully look into this one. However, I should just add...
Thank you for that. You answered it. The parameters did not allow you to get that evidence. Now, there is one person who had the authority to expand the parameters of that Order in Council, and that is the Prime Minister himself, correct?
I would have to say, Mr. Chair, I'm not exactly sure of the exact process of where the Prime Minister would be involved in such a decision. However, I do believe the decision has to be made within the somewhere within the government.
I would submit the decision would have to be made by the Prime Minister, but the RCMP went and requested an expansion of the scope to obtain that evidence, to follow that evidence, correct?
Before we proceeded with the assessment, yes, we did make a request for an expansion to the parameters.
I would just add, Mr. Cooper, it's not to follow the evidence, it's to glean additional information. That could be evidence.
Correct. And that request was turned down on August 30th, 2019.
I would have to say, Mr. Chair, that the request for the expansion was not allowed.
It was turned down, and it was turned down by the PCO, the Prime Minister's Department, correct?
Mr. Chair, we did receive a letter from the Department of Justice. I could not remember exactly, specifically, if this came from the...
Yeah. Well, it was from the PCO, and that's in the RCMP's investigation report. And would it be fair to say that the refusal by the Prime Minister's personal department, the PCO, to expand the scope of the Order in Council significantly impeded the full investigation into the Prime Minister's potential obstruction of justice?
It limited our capability of pursuing a full investigation.
And it would have limited it in a fairly significant way. Because after all, we're talking about going to the heart of the matter of obstruction.
And again, I don't know what additional, not knowing what additional information is out there, it's hard for me to speculate that there's a Pandora box out there which is full of information, so it's hard for us without speculating.
Well, let the record show that the Prime Minister's Department, the PCO, obstructed the RCMP investigation into the Prime Minister's potential obstruction of justice. Are you aware of any other Canadian who can single-handedly block the RCMP from investigating his own criminality in such an effective way as the Prime Minister?
Good question. Fantastic. I wouldn't use the term, Mr. President, I wouldn't use the term block. The RCMP is, when it runs an investigation, it operates within the parameters and the regulations that we're allowed to. And we see international security investigation as well, where there's some information that we don't have access to, we can't use into an investigation. So it's the parameters. It's the parameters that we are.
I think the answer to that question is there is no one who has such powers. And was any explanation provided by the Prime Minister's personal department why there was this refusal to expand the scope of the Order in Council?
Again, Mr. Chair, as far as for a response on this one, of course, it was indicated, of course, the importance, of course, of these privileges that do exist. They are there for a reason, and again, as the Commissioner mentioned, we do have to operate within these parameters.
It would seem to me to be part of a pattern of a cover-up.
That's right.
That's what it would seem to me to be. How can the Prime Minister be subject to the rule of law, like every other Canadian, if his personal department can shield him from an RCMP criminal investigation?
Absolutely. So, Mr. Chair, I'll let individuals draw their own conclusion. What I come back to is we operate within a set of regulations and parameters that unfortunately we made the effort to go and get additional information, and it was refused.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Went to get information, and it was refused. So there you go. Anyway, like I said, Michael Cooper, Michael Barrett, and Larry Brock, great MPs. These three gentlemen, in my humble opinion, are here for Canadians. They're doing the right thing. They have a good heart. They know what's right, and they know what's wrong. I say, keep up the good work, gentlemen. Keep up the good work. My last one I'm going to show you is another scandal, of course, because there's all kinds of scandals. There's no lack of scandals with Trudeau in Canada. And here's the latest one, just the other day.
Justin Trudeau was not worth the cost, the crime, the corruption, and the cover-up. But now we know that he cannot protect our people or our country. We've just received these documents that Trudeau has been covering up for years. Documents related to a massive security breach at the Trudeau government's most sensitive laboratory, where the most dangerous viruses and pathogens are studied and handled. We have learned that the Trudeau government's head of pathogens was collaborating with members of Beijing's People's Liberation Army who are responsible for bioweapons and bioterrorism. We know now that a People's Liberation Army official was able to gain personal access, walk in the door, look at computers, and have access to all of our most important virological secrets. Let me, if you think any of this is hyperbole, read the report yourself. This is from government documents, the Trudeau government's own documents. It says here on page 142, Winnipeg lab scientist Dr. Chu is head of the Special Pathogens Unit, the top person in that job. According to documents on page 242, quote, represents a serious and credible danger to the Government of Canada as a whole, and in particular at facilities considered high security due to the potential for theft of dangerous materials attractive to terrorists and foreign entities that conduct espionage to infiltrate and damage the economic security of Canada, end quote. It states further on page 239, investigators assessed that Dr. Chu communicated with foreign entities during her trips to China. The evidence obtained from interviews and from information collected from the electronic content of her devices reveal that this is indeed the case. As a subject matter expert with access to sensitive information and dangerous materials, Dr. Chu presents a realistic and credible threat to Canada's economic security when conducting repeated and clandestine meetings with foreign entities, end quote. Then it says Dr. Chu conducted joint research with the Major General Chen Wei of the People's Liberation Army, who according to page 236 is a noted top virologist at the Academy of Military Medical Sciences and is China's chief biological defense expert engaged in research related to biosafety, biodefense, and bioterrorism. Bioterrorism, end quote. And these are documents, this is right out of the government's own documents. Trudeau, what did he do when he found out about this? Did he immediately inform Canadians of the breach? Did he fire anybody? No, no one was fired. Did he call an inquiry to get to the bottom of it? No, he didn't do that either. Instead, he covered it all up. He defied 4 parliamentary orders to release these documents. When the Speaker tried to get them, he sued the Speaker to cover this up. He said it was all for national security, but well, we know from a committee composed of 4 members of Parliament, including 1 Liberal, and 3 judges, and I quote, the information appears to be mostly about protecting the organization from embarrassment for failures in policy and implementation, not legitimate national security concerns, and its release is essential to hold the government to account. In other words, there was no national security reason why we couldn't have had this before. It was only because Trudeau didn't want the embarrassment before an election. So what did he do then? He collaborated, knowing this, he collaborated with Beijing to buy a vaccine for COVID. Could you imagine if the deal that Trudeau wanted to sign with Beijing had gone ahead and we had procured China-made vaccines after learning this information? That's what was in this guy's head. And if you think for a minute, because I know there'll be all kinds of excuses, well, he's not responsible and how could he possibly take ownership of what happens in his government. Let me quote him. He has a document called Open and Accountable Government. And I quote, "As head of government, the Prime Minister has special responsibilities for national security," end quote. It's his responsibility. This is his government's lab. It's not a random university lab. It's the top lab for the Prime Minister's public health agency. And he is exclusively responsible for the machinery of government as Prime Minister of the country. So this is on Justin Trudeau. I will add one last thing. Not only did he cover it up, not only did he try to get a vaccine from China after knowing this, he called a snap election to make sure that the voting would happen before this came out. And what happened in that election? Beijing interfered to help him win it. This is a man who says he admires China's basic communist dictatorship. We cannot trust Justin Trudeau to keep our people and its country safe. We need a strong, conservative, common-sense government that will root out foreign interference, protect our critical secrets and our medical research, and stand on guard for our country to keep our people and our nation safe. Thank you.
That in a nutshell right there. But here we are in Canada with those scandals basically that I just let you watch from Michael Barrett, Michael Cooper, and Larry Brock, and of course now Pierre Poilievre. What's going to be done? What's going to be done? Is anything going to be done? Good questions. Get a hold of your MPs, email them. But so much for sunny ways. Trudeau was like, "Oh, sunny ways, my friends, sunny ways." Well, there's so many scandals I can't even keep track. Transparency in a government should be number one. Should be number one. And of course, looking after people, looking after the people of their countries, whatever country that may be. United States, New Zealand, Venezuela, Canada, whoever's in charge, they have to have the best interest of the people at heart. When they don't, it's time for them to go. They have to step down, get voted out, whatever the case may be. But in my opinion, Trudeau should resign. Do the right thing for Canadians. Just step down. We've had enough taxation. We've had enough scandals. We've had enough of the abuse, right? Just do the right thing. If you want to have Canada's backs, step down, resign. Do the right thing for Canadians. We'd probably have a lot more respect for you if you did that. That's a fact. That's for sure. Anyway, listen, thank you very much for tuning into today's podcast. Much appreciated. Thank you for subscribing and liking my channel. Should be a bell in here somewhere right there. When you like, subscribe, and check the bell, you will be notified every time I put forth a new video. I can be found on Rumble. I can be found on Spotify. And I can also be found on Apple products, Android products, social media, pretty much. Share my videos. Spread it around. Leave some stuff in the comments right below. Let me know what you think about this video. Let me know what you think about the stuff I just mentioned. And hey, let me know what you think about Trudeau as far as what do you think he should do? Do you think he should step down? Do you think he should still keep on doing what he's doing? On the world stage, Canada doesn't look too good sometimes because of what happens with our leaders. We need good, strong, solid people that look after our best interests. Remember, they work for us. We don't work for them. It's that simple. All right, folks. Once again, thanks for checking in to the Surge Effect, looking at my podcast. It's much appreciated. Until next time, cheers. This episode sponsored by He Shirts, She Shirts. Go to www.heshirtssheshirts.ca. Just type in the letters TSA, the Surge Effect. When you check out, type in TSA for your coupon and receive 10% off your next purchase. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, everybody.